This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Big up Des Moines. This is Dr. Negus, Rudis and Imhotep, coming back with enough information regarding issues in our society. I first want to give a shout out to Infinite Resources and Amplified DSM for sponsoring this show. I'm here today a little melancholy. But for our topic today is the state of U.S. wealth inequity. Let me say it again. The state of the United States wealth inequity. I have an article here that was written by Ann Hernandez Kent and Lowell R. Ricketts. This article was written July 31st, 2023, so the information is new and relevant. And here I go. The state of the U.S. wealth inequity presents a timely look at average inflation's adjusted wealth for various demographic groups. The Institute for Economic Equity provides quarterly data on racial, generational, and educational wealth inequity based on the U.S. household wealth. Knowing the current state of wealth inequity sheds light on opportunities to foster a more equitable economy where everyone can thrive. This estimates reveals the size of wealth gap between different demographic groups and identify which groups have the fewest resources. Knowing the magnitude of these gaps over time is an important step towards understanding why these differences persist and what actions might close them. Expanding the opportunity to build wealth for all families create the potential for greater economic equity. Key takeaways. This article was written just this year, this past March. So I'm going to deliver some of the data that is here. How much wealth inequity is there in the United States? A great question. The top 10% households by wealth have 6.8 million on average. The top 10% of the population who has wealth averages at 6.8 million. As a group, they hold 69% of the total household wealth. The bottom 50% of households by wealth had $48,000 on average. As a group, they held only 2.4% of the total household wealth. Tremendous gap. What is the current generational wealth gap? Younger Americans, millennials, and Gen Zers own 69% for every $1 of wealth owned by a Gen Zer the same age. The younger American millennials and Gen Zers own 72 cents on every $1 of wealth by baby boomers at the same age. Interesting. What is the current racial wealth gap? Black families own about 24 cents on every dollar of wealth a white family has on average. So less than a quarter to a dollar. Hispanic families own 23%, oh, excuse me, not 23%. Hispanic families own 23 cents on every dollar of a white family's wealth on average. So it shows that there's a tremendous gap in comparison to 23 and 24 cents for black and Hispanic families, where white have exactly $1 worth of wealth. Why is this? Well, from a historical standpoint, we see how this nation was built. Through the transatlantic slave trade, let me go back. That's not the beginning of African history, but that was an eruption with African history. But through the transatlantic slave trade that happened in 1455 by Pope Nicholas, when he wrote the Papal Bull, he commissioned King Alphonse V of Portugal to go into West Africa and subdue human cargo. Why did that happen? Because right around that same time, Alfonso fought off the Moors. The Moors were black men and women who came from North Africa, and they had came to Spain, and they populated Spain, and they conquered Spain, and they built the nation of Spain. They are the foundations of what Spain is today. Barcelona, Granada, all of the beautiful cities of Spain, all of the water aqueducts that's created there, they were created by black men and women who were known as Moors. They brought that information, helped to construct that civilization. Yet when we look at what's going on here in America, from all those centuries past, white men who were landowners had control of everything. They had control of the land. They had control of human that they had codified and made into livestock. Human beings, Africans, were considered livestock in this country. So people who were once commodified are now competing for a dollar. From the very intention of this nation when it was created, it was never intended for no one other than whites to feel, enjoy the benefits of society. In 1636, it was called the Maryland Edict. This was prior to this country was even established. The colony of Maryland, because it wasn't a state yet, because it was a colony of Britain. The colony of Maryland, they made sure that blacks were never intended to obtain the luxuries that this society had to offer. They worked from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. They worked on places that they called plantations, which were basically death camps. Before the plantation era occurred, many blacks were forced to deforest land so that planters could plant. The owners could plant the products that they wanted. So we look at that from 1636. We go forward another 100 years into the 1700s. It was in the state of South Carolina. It wasn't even a state yet. It was still a colony, but I call it a state because, for a point of reference, South Carolina created the South Carolina Negro Act. And in that act, because of a rebellion that occurred a year before in 1739, it was called the Sono Rebellion in South Carolina. 1740, an edict was passed and sent from Great Britain to the members of South Carolina. And in that edict, it stated that blacks could not travel without a permit. Blacks could not grow their own food. Blacks were not were prohibited from learning to read. Blacks could not come together in a congregation, a big group of people, unless there was someone else that was white that was around that could see what was going on. And the final statement in that Negro Act of 1740, it stated that if any individual who got mouthy or was sick and maybe tired and couldn't work, they could beat them as well as take their lives. Also, what was not noted was that there was the law still too. There was a law that was created at the time that it was impossible for a black woman to be raped. Their law was that all black women were promiscuous, and if somebody had sex with them, that's what they do anyway. Ooh, look at what's going on in this society. That's from our past, but it filters into what we're doing today. I'm talking about what's going on with wealth and how the divide is so unequal. The current gap, the current wealth gap in household education. Families headed by someone with some college education, but no 4-year degree, has 30 cents for every $1 worth of wealth by a family held by a 4-year college degree. Ooh. Families headed by someone with a high school diploma has 23 cents for every $1 worth of wealth held by families headed by a 4-year college graduate. And here's the third one. Families headed by someone with less than a high school diploma had 10 cents on every dollar of wealth held by families held by a 4-year college graduate. Overall, the average wealth for any group, most from 2020 to 2021, even after controlling historical inflation. However, some gains were erased in 2022 and early 2023 with the loss of financial markets and weakening housing markets. Why am I talking about U.S. wealth and inequality? We're seeing in the news just yesterday, a day before yesterday, we see the war that's going on in Israel. We see war going on in Ukraine. And there's wars going on all over this planet. But what I saw was how the United States government came to the aid of Israel and Ukraine and brought $100 billion to help those people. I have no qualms with helping people who are in trouble or helping people who are in need, especially when they're able-bodied and they're trying to do it and they're doing their best, but yet obstacles remain in their way for them to succeed. I saw President Joe Biden bring $100 billion to Israel, and for them to divide it between Israel, Ukraine, and the other portion of the money is supposed to go towards the southern border of the United States. America goes outside and does things outside the country for their own national interests. But yet America has not opened their ears to hear the cry of people who need to be paid. America has a debt with the African American community, and they know they have a debt, but they won't pay it. John Conyers was a former congressman, African American. I'm inclined to believe he was from Ohio or Michigan. He stayed in office for 40 years. And for 40 years, he led the charge to tell Congress that we need to look at H.R. 40, as House Bill 40. And in House Bill 40, it stated that they wanted the Congress to investigate and look into the possibilities of paying reparations to black people in America who are the descendants of ex-people who were enslaved. But the United States don't want to talk about that. They don't want to. They might have somebody say a little something about it, but they don't. They're not concerned. When World War II ended, we see what happened to Israel. People were exterminated. We hear the term Holocaust, and people come to realize or come to think that there was only one Holocaust. I'm not discrediting anyone's Holocaust, but there are numerous Holocausts that has gone throughout the ages. The transatlantic slave trade on the passage, there was a middle passage in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. They called it the Middle Passage because when they got in the middle of the Atlantic, quite often there were people that were sick and were dying or was dead. And they took the dead bodies out and just threw them over the ships. Work all day. Come here in chains. Forced to work till you die. And you didn't get no pay. You work for free. America owes a debt. I'm looking at the society right now, and I look at people here in this city of Des Moines. Just 3 or 4 blocks from where I'm sitting right now, you can see a big old beautiful downtown Des Moines, high-rise, businesses, insurance companies, agricultural businesses, everything going on inside. Des Moines has a lot of money. But you go in that opposite direction from going downtown and go west, under bridges, there's colonies of people who are homeless. I'm saying colonies of folks that are living under bridges right now. But yet, Des Moines has been labeled as one of the best cities in the United States for millennials and young professionals to come here and live the life of Raleigh. Great employment opportunities. The city's not that big. You can drive from downtown Des Moines, east, west, north, or south. In 15 minutes, you're out of town. A little small place. It's not a real big place. A lot of people are doing well here, but it's a whole lot more that are not. And it's because of the wealth gap. My clarion call is for each and every individual in this society to come to realize that America has a debt to pay, and you owe African Americans who are the descendants of slaves. We see this wealth gap. As a matter of fact, I know I saw something last year that stated that for every $1 of wealth that a white family has, a black family has 10 cents worth of wealth. $1 worth of wealth, 10 cents worth of wealth. Big difference. Big difference. I was reading an article this morning about a young man and his wife in eastern Tennessee. He's doing good, doing well. Him and his wife both are business professionals, and they moved into this upscale community in eastern Tennessee in this little town, and these young folks had the house built for them. They wanted it built from the ground up. And the house was almost at the point of being completed. This young black man and his wife went to just go in and look at the place. When they pulled up, they noticed how everybody in the neighborhood, it was a predominantly white neighborhood, everybody in the neighborhood started coming out looking at them. And even folks was looking through their screens and windows to look and see what is going on with somebody black in our community. The young man got out of his car, he and his wife, and they had the keys to go in the door, and they went inside and started walking around and looking at the place that they had designed for them to live in. After a couple of minutes or so while they walked through the building, they came outside, and a neighbor across the street comes running out and hollering, "What y'all doing over there? You don't have no business here." And the young man told him, "Oh, yes, I do, sir. This is my house that's being built." He said, "Don't you move. I called the police, and I'm going to have the police come and get you because I know you're up to no good because all you black folks, all y'all going to do, you're going to steal something or you're a criminal." This is your next door neighbor. After you done spend maybe $400,000 to $500,000 on building a new home, and this is your first encounter with your neighbors. It shows that the color of law is quite different because this society was created here in the United States. Segregation of home ownership was legalized in this country. That's where we get the term redlining. The power structure has the authority financially, militarily, to do what they want to do. And the poor, common person, or someone who, I'm just going to holler poor, people who are just trying to make a living are catching hell in this society. The pandemic was a pure barometer of the inequities that was created in this society. And it seems like for a moment around 2020, 2021, it lifted the veil of ignorance off the people's eyes, and they saw the disparities. The disparities was there before the pandemic. Now here we are. We're not, I don't know if we're post-pandemic or not, but looking at what's going on today, the inflation rate has gone up so high. The cost of food is so high. I remember just 2 or 3 years ago, I could spend $200 or $300 at a time just to go to a grocery store and buy food for my family. Today, it's not the same. You go by and look at all the different churches that are handing out food because there's a need. You got community and county associations that have food banks that give food out to people, and it's still not enough because there's so many people that are in need. America has to do better if it wants to stand up to the principles of what they tell us about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's kind of hard to pursue happiness when your belly's growling. The late Bob Marley said, "Me belly full, but me hungry. And the hungry man is an angry man." Angry people do crazy things sometimes. America needs to do something to turn the dial down on the anger that's going on here in this country. We're divided on political lines. We're divided on ethnic lines. This nation is divided. We got an 80-year-old man, an 81-year-old man calling himself, he's the president. You got another man who got I don't know how many indictments against him and got so many felony charges, and he's the front runner for the Republican Party. Shit. I had to say shit. I had a felony charge back in 1996, and it stopped me from moving into where I want to move. It hindered me from being employed to where I know I had the criteria, I had the credentials, and I met all the criteria to do the job proficiently. And I have that one charge. This man got 91 charges, and he running talking about he about to become president again. Ain't that some shit? America, you got a debt. The retired slave says, "When do I get paid?" I want to get paid. My community needs to be paid to bring some equity into what's going on in this country. If not, just like nations rise and fall, and how so many people say this is the best place in the world to live, it might be, unless you've been to other places and found something different. I love this place because I was born in this place. I visited outside this country and been to different places, but I love America. And that's why I can speak and say what I say. Because you say that I got a First Amendment right. And I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Time is winding up, America. Open up the banks. I don't want to go there, but I had to now. I had to regress. I was about to shut off, but I got to regress. I went from a historical standpoint and said some things about what happened in the past. I have to come to also bring to your attention that in the 1870s, early 1870s, late 1860s, after the Civil War and Reconstruction occurred, there was a bank called the Freedmen's Bank that was created for black people, and they deposited money in that bank. It got to the point where investors, black people who were predominantly investors, had put $57 million in that bank in the 1870s. And what happened? The American bureaucracy stole every dollar out of there. They gave the money to whites to buy land, while black people were putting money in the bank, and couldn't get a withdrawal to do their work, what they wanted to do with their money. That's why I come to understand now when I remember my great-grandmother. She lived back in the day. And after the Depression of 1929, my grandmother would not put any money in the bank. She would use Folger coffee cans and wrap them up and sack them up and dig holes in the ground in her garden to put her money down in the ground because she didn't trust the banks. And that's probably why today so many people of African descent are not well banked. You walk in the bank and people, if you're black, unless you can even be suit and tie, it don't make a difference. If you're black, they automatically equate you with not having. America, I'm coming back at you. I'm loving America, and I'm speaking out to America. You got to do better, because what you're doing right now is a bunch of bullshit. These people need help out here. You wealthy folks talk about, oh, on the news I look and see, oh, we might be going into a recession. Yes, it's a recession when you have means. When you don't have means, it's a depression. Ask the people under the bridge, are they living in a recession? I bet you they'll tell you, get your ass out of here. This is Dr. Negus Imhotep, and I'm signing off.
This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.